Hello, critical thinkers. Hello, critical thinkers. Hope all is well. My name is Fred. Welcome if you're on the chat. I appreciate you coming. Today, I'll be giving you an update on the Robert Brooks homicide. For those of you who don't know, I've been personally following this case since December. It's horrified many people. It's motivated me to start reporting on what's occurring. And in my research, in my journalism, I've learned so much about the New York State correctional facilities and the dock system, and this is ultimately widespread systematic abuse that's occurring. So many people have been waiting for an update on the Robert Brooks case. For those of you who don't know, Letitia James passed it on to the special prosecutor, which was William Fitzpatrick, and now we know about the update that came out today, just about an hour and a half ago. So I'm going to be reading an article from the Times Union with the status of the grand jury indictments in Oneida County, and let's take a look at that now. By the way, if anyone wants to come and chat with me at the end of the article, by all means, come on. The only thing that I do say is that if you want to chat with me, have a working camera, have a decent microphone, and also, don't play any music in the background. So I'm going to open up this article now and share it with everybody. Okay, so sealed indictment handed up against officers in beating death of Robert Brooks. So ultimately, this is promising. This is a very promising thing that we have a sealed indictment handed up against the officers in the beating death of Robert Brooks. A grand jury in Oneida County has handed up charges against correction officers involved in the December 9th beating of an inmate at Marcy Correctional Facility. Albany, a grand jury in Oneida County has handed up a sealed indictment in the homicide of Robert L. Brooks, who died after he was beaten by multiple correction officers at Marcy Correctional Facility in December. So one thing I want to do quickly is just go over exactly what a sealed indictment is. So I'm going to be sharing a resource with you. So just give me a second. I'm going to pop it up on my screen that goes over exactly what a sealed indictment is. Okay, give me 1 second. Sealed indictment. Oh, wrong one. One quick second. Okay, here we go. So let's go over what it means for a sealed indictment to be in place. A sealed indictment is a legal document that is filed by a prosecutor and allows the district attorney's office to bring criminal charges against an individual or group of individuals. The key difference between a regular indictment and a sealed indictment is that the latter is kept secret from the public until the defendant is arrested or brought to court. This means that the charges contained in a sealed indictment are not made known to the accused, his or her defense attorney, or the general public. So at the current moment, the defendants, we don't know exactly whom is going to be charged yet and what. Those defendants don't know that they will be charged. So at the moment, this is being kept private and confidential. I'm going to continue reading in terms of what a sealed indictment is. Okay. The complexity of sealed indictments. Sealed indictments can be quite complex and involve a number of legal considerations. In order to obtain a sealed indictment, a prosecutor must convince a judge that it is necessary to keep the charges secret in order to prevent the accused from fleeing, tampering with evidence, or harming others. This is especially common in cases involving organized crime, drug trafficking, terrorism, and other serious offenses. The decision to file a sealed indictment is made by the prosecutor after a thorough investigation has been conducted. Once the indictment is sealed, it is delivered to law enforcement agencies who can then proceed with the arrest of the accused without prior notice. This element of surprise is intended to prevent the accused from evading capture. Why sealed indictments are used. Sealed indictments are an important tool for law enforcement and prosecutors for a number of reasons. First and foremost, they allow investigators to gather evidence and build a strong case against the accused without tipping them off. By keeping the indictment sealed, law enforcement can continue their investigation, uncovering additional evidence and witnesses without interference. So, I'm not going to continue reading the entire web page here, but just so that people understand, as of the current moment, the indictment is sealed. Those people who are accused, who will be arrested and brought up on charges, they don't know that yet. So the article mentioned there are multiple reasons why this was kept secret and confidential. They mentioned the possibility of somebody fleeing. They mentioned the possibility of continuing the investigation, not tipping people off. So these are very important reasons why the indictments are sealed. So we actually have a question here. CCHR, has anyone been arrested? The answer is no. No one has been arrested as of yet. I mentioned in a couple of previous videos, I think we all are. Those people who want justice, we want to see the perp walk. We want to see the correctional officers involved and those who engage in the cover up. We want to see them wearing shiny bracelets. We want to see them stand trial, and we want justice. So, as of right now, no one has been arrested. If I were any of these corrections officers, if I was Anthony Farina, if I was Matthew Gallagher, if I was any of the other officers who are involved, I would not be sleeping very pretty right now. You know, I would be very concerned. I would be very worried. I'm sure the defense attorneys of these corrections officers have prepped their clients in terms of what to say, what not to say. Uh, all of these correctional officers have not made any public comments that I'm aware of. For those of you who don't know, there was a video from the Long Island audit who confronted Anthony Farina on the block of his home, and his son had some harsh words for him. So at the moment, that was a long-winded answer, Kevin. But at the moment, no one has been arrested. Vicky says, I'm sure the police are already watching those that will be arrested. Absolutely. I'm pretty sure they have some sort of surveillance on the home. They're keeping tabs on the corrections officers. So at the moment, we don't know how many officers are going to be arrested and what specifically the charges will be. So now that we know what a sealed indictment is, let's jump back to the article and see what it has to say. Okay. Okay, so we read the first paragraph in terms of the multiple correction officers at Marcy Correctional Facility in December. So moving forward, the indictment is scheduled to be unsealed in Oneida County Court on Tuesday. So this is a very important fact to know. As of now, we know that it's going to be unsealed. We are going to know exactly who is going to be charged and what the charges will be. We will know this on Tuesday. So that's big. Multiple correctional officers are expected to face criminal charges, although it's unclear how many officers have been indicted and what charges they may face. At least 5 of the 17 correctional officers who were in or around the infirmary room where Brooks was beaten while handcuffed had used physical force on him. So we saw on camera 5 officers use physical force on him, and that was when the body cam started capturing footage. So we also don't know if there were other officers involved, back at Mohawk Correctional. But as of now, we saw with our own eyes 5 correction officers use force on Robert Brooks. Moving on. There was also several medical staff members present during the incident. So I want to say a quick thing about, let me make myself big again. Okay, I want to say a quick thing about these medical staff. There were a couple of comments that people made that the medical staff should face no charges whatsoever. So this is what my research has found. You can go to the freelance, you can go to other sources that report it, and also civil cases in which it's alleged that nursing staff actively covered up the abuses that inmates have faced. Okay, so from what we can tell from the press conference that was done with Anthony Brooks, I'm sorry, Robert Brooks Jr., uh, also his brother was at the press conference, and the 2 attorneys. We heard of from the attorney's mouth that there was a cover up that occurred, because we know that murders and beatings have been covered up for years. That's something that we do know, and that is a crime. To falsify medical documentation, to to hide a beating, to hide a murder is a crime. And those nurses who participated in that crime should ultimately lose their medical license. They should lose their license. We have a comment from Vicky I want to read. We do want justice, but this has to be done correctly, because unlike the average person, these officers have the power of Niskoba behind them. That's very true. Niskoba is a very, very powerful police union. I'm going to be doing a video about Niskoba directly and the influence they have in various counties in upstate New York. I'm sure there are people here that know a lot more than me about New York State correctional facilities. And what we do know is that these prisons ultimately in some counties are the biggest employers for that county. They bring in jobs, they bring in contracts, they bring in businesses, they bring in business. So the officer union, they have very big pull and influence with elected officials. And then we have another comment, same union for both New York State Correctional Officers and Police Benevolent Association, Inc. Yes, that's correct. That's correct. So let's jump back to the article. The death of Brooks was ruled a homicide. Pardon. The death of Brooks was ruled a homicide on January 28th by the Onondaga County Medical Examiner's Office. The Times Union reported on February 4th that a special grand jury in Oneida County was scheduled to begin reviewing evidence in the case earlier this week. Some correction officers offered to cooperate in the investigation, but others declined offers to testify in front of the grand jury, according to sources briefed on the investigation. So this is actually new. Actually, I'm sorry, I wasn't sharing the article. I'll bring it back up again. So this is something that we don't know. Some correction officers offer to cooperate in the investigation, but others decline offers to testify in front of the grand jury. So we know for a fact that if there's pressure applied, people will flip. The amount of press coverage that's out there, um, it's not that great. I mean, the mainstream media has covered some of this, but they have not, on a continued basis, covered what occurs. And that's one of my biggest pet peeves with the mainstream media and other news outlets. You will hear about a case one time, and then afterward it dies. The case dies. The media attention is not there. But this is something that's new that we haven't heard. Some correction officers offered to cooperate in the investigation, but others declined to testify in front of the grand jury. I can tell you that, God forbid, if I was one of those correction officers involved in that, I would have secured a defense attorney. I would offer testimony um, in order not to face murder charges. So, also, one thing that is my prediction that I do believe, I'm not sure whether it's going to come out in the in the in the in the sealed indictment when it does come out. I'm assuming it will, but we should be able to know who testified in that grand jury. And just one of my thoughts, one of my predictions is that Kyle Deschnaw, the nurse that you saw in the video, my prediction is that he he testified and that he's offering state's evidence. Let me know if you agree with me in the chat. And the reason why I think Kyle Deschnaw, um, why he why he testified or will be cooperating is the look on his face when in the video, for those of you who haven't seen it at the end, when he was checking Robert Brooks' vitals. The look on his face when he walked away and he looked at the other nurse and you saw his face, it was like, you know, wow, this guy passed away. And then he moved away from one of the corrections officers. I believe it was the leader of the beat up squad. I believe that might have been Sergeant Tromley there. He moved away almost afraid to collide with the COs. It seems as though there's influence, there's force, and some of the nursing staff probably they're afraid as well. They're afraid as well. Um, Let me go back to the article. 1 second. Oh, Vicky says, I agree. Dashnaw was fidgety, pacing during the whole thing. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, and by the way, there's 30 people in this chat. By all means, if you're able to put in your city and state, I would love to know where you're from and how you heard about critical conversations. So let's jump back to the article. Okay. Okay, so we're here. A copy of the autopsy report indicated that Brooks died as a result of compression of the neck and multiple blunt impact injuries. Although blood tests revealed Brooks had synthetic marijuana in his system, the autopsy does not indicate that it was a factor in his death. Now, there was another news article that I read in a different video that made reference to the synthetic marijuana in his system. I don't remember offhand whether it was uh, this same media outlet. I personally have a problem with it, with saying that he had synthetic marijuana. It doesn't contribute to the cause of death. Why even mention it? At the time I first read it, it felt a little bit like a stab, but that could be me being sensitive. Okay, let's jump back to the article. It's unclear if the medical examiner, it's unclear if the medical examiner's conclusion will be enough to help sustain homicide charges or whether the grand jury considered lesser charges such as felony assault. I want to stop it there for a quick second because this is something that I mentioned. This is something that other people had picked up. If you watch the Long Island audit, you watch the confrontation between Long Island audit and Anthony Farina and Anthony Farina's son, who I believe gave away a key defense justification. He said it happened at Mohawk. It happened at Mohawk, and he said this after Long Island audit said to him, "Your father killed Robert Brooks. It's on camera." And he said, "It happened at Mohawk." So this bothers me a little bit that this article mentioned felony assault. That's a possibility that they won't be charged with homicide, that they will be charged with felony assault instead. Obviously, it's clear the way he died. You might have some of the correctional officers who had more of a hand in and the murder of Robert Brooks. There's one corrections officer who picked him up by the neck and lifted him up. Very brutal. The autopsy said there was blunt force trauma. There was asphyxiation. So this is something that I think the defense attorneys are going to mention, that yes, this is assault, but what they did not cause the death of Robert Brooks. You and I know it's nonsense, it's malarkey. The question is, if this does go to a grand jury, I'm sorry, if this does go to a jury, whether the jury will convict these men and by that defense that they only assaulted him, that they did not kill him. So let's go back to the article. The case is being handled, okay, pardon me. The case is being handled by the office of Onondaga County District Attorney William J. Fitzpatrick, who was named a special prosecutor last month after the state attorney general's office recused itself from the criminal investigation, citing a potential conflict of interest. The appointment of the appointment of Fitzpatrick's office, which was authorized by a judge, may become a point of challenge for any defendants in this case. So I don't know why. I don't have the expertise as to why it may be a point of challenge for any defendants in the case. If there's any attorneys out there who have some knowledge or can talk about why that would be the case, feel free to let me know. Feel free to share. Going back to the article, Jarrett A. Woodfork, a chief assistant district attorney, excuse me, in Fitzpatrick office, is leading the investigation for that office. Sources brief on the matter said that Woodford, as of 2 weeks ago, was not making any offers, including plea bargains, to the officers and medical staff members who witnessed the incident, but did not take part in the beating of Brooks. So I want to give you some quick thoughts about that. That's tough talk, in my opinion. I don't believe that that's truly the case. I think you need people to flip. You need people to cooperate. You have a stronger case. You will have a stronger trial. You'll have a stronger prosecution. If you have some of the correctional officers who did not put a hand on him, but who can testify. So I think this is really strong talk. And basically, what's going to happen is the district attorney is going to say, we spoke to the family, and they will get authorization from the family to not prosecute the other officers who may not have touched Robert Brooks, but they will cut them a deal, or they will grant them immunity. And in fact, if you have a correction officer who is testifying at the grand jury, most likely that's already been worked out. But I could be wrong. I'm not an attorney. I don't play one on television, so don't take what I say as gospel. If there are any defense attorneys out there, I'd love to connect with you, so hit me up. Let's jump back to the article. The day after the Times-Union first reported the autopsy results, Governor Kathy Hochul said in a statement that the legal process must quickly move forward with criminal charges being filed and arrests being made. Those responsible for Mr. Brooks' death must be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. And I recognize the need to build an airtight prosecution to ensure those individuals are brought to justice, she said. This reprehensible act of violence demands the full force of our justice system. The family of Mr. Brooks deserves no further delays. So that's a statement. Obviously, it it sounds nice. It sounds nice, but I truly believe that the governor has known about these abuses for a long time. Letitia James, the New York State Attorney General, knew about these abuses since she took office. So they knew about it. It's tough talk. Politicians want to look good. So let's continue on. 17 correction department employees, 4 sergeants 11 correction officers and 2 nurses have been suspended and are facing discipline. Anthony Farina, who was among the 5 officers shown using physical force on Brooks, resigned immediately following it. And it's obviously why he immediately resigned. He would have to answer questions from Doc's investigators, and he wasn't going to do that because what he did looks like the most damning. Anthony Farina stomped on Robert Brooks' genitalia. Just horrible, horrible. Okay. I moved ahead. Let me go back. Okay. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Okay, here we go. A day after. I'm sorry. I'm having some. What happened? My apologies. Okay, it's working. A day after the Times Union first reported the autopsy. Oh, I read this already. Those responsible for mission. Oh, I read that already too. Sorry. Uh, bear with me. Okay. 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 Pardon me. Give me a second. Okay. The decision by the Attorney General's office to recuse itself was based on its ongoing work defending civil lawsuits filed previously against 4 of the officers involved in the beating. That the Attorney General's office also subsequently recused itself from representing those officers and others in the civil lawsuits in which they were accused of similar incidents of excessive force. So, this is something that's also new, that the New York State Attorney General recused itself from the civil lawsuits that were occurring. My belief is that they're attempting to distance themselves from this. The FBI and U.S. Justice Department, which has a civil rights division that handles criminal cases involving law enforcement misconduct, including instances of excessive force, were also reviewing the case but have given no indication they will intervene. Brooks was punched, kicked, and choked after he had just been moved to Marcy Correctional on the evening of December 9th from Mohawk Correctional Facility, where sources told the Times Union that he had been attacked at least twice by other inmates. 4 Marcy officers carried him from a prison sally port into the nearby infirmary with his arms handcuffed behind his back. He was placed on an exam bed and surrounded by numerous officers and at least 2 sergeants. So you had 2 sergeants who were there who witnessed this. No one stopped what was happening. So those sergeants obviously bear a large amount of responsibility for not stopping the abuse, not stopping the murder. The officers began striking Brooks, who was still handcuffed, after one of them had wiped Brooks' face with a white rag and appeared to try and push it into his mouth. So this is Anthony Farina. We saw what he did. If you watched the video, he took a rag, shoved it into Robert Brooks' mouth, and tried to put his hand over his mouth. We do know that at some point, Anthony Farina had a bite mark on a couple of his fingers, assuming this came from Robert Brooks trying to survive, trying to have this rag taken out of his mouth. Absolutely disgusting. Okay. The Times Union reported in December that officers had alleged they began using physical force on Brooks after he tried to bite one of them. If that occurred, the level of force used on Brooks was both excessive and unnecessary, according to interviews with law enforcement sources and veteran correction officers who watched the body cam videos. So There is no justification for what happened. In the video we saw, Anthony Farina had gotten bit. That was after Anthony Farina shoved a rag down Robert Brooks' mouth and tried to choke him. There's no justification for it. He was absolutely defenseless. He was not a threat. Now, I do have correction associates, law enforcement associates, and it is possible for someone to be handcuffed and be a threat. But obviously, this was not the case with Robert Brooks, so that argument does not stand true here. Let's go back to the article. Okay. The autopsy report gives a time of death as 3:52 a.m. on December 10th, roughly 6 hours after the beating. We know that is not the case. We know that. Oh, and actually, I just read a comment here from Vicky who writes, I mean, was he supposed to sit there and be murdered? Of course not. He was, you're handcuffed. You have no means of defending yourself. That's the least that he can do is bite someone who's shoving a rag down his mouth. So going back to the time of death, we know he died at Marcy Correctional at that infirmary. That's where he died. They attempted to revive Robert Brooks. You saw multiple times a sternum rub that occurred. They pulled out defibrillators and he was gone. We have a comment I want to go to. Sir Hotz says, who are the inmates that Brooks had a fight with? Do we really know if Brooks had a fight? Was the fight a setup to have Brooks transferred to be unalived? Good question. We don't know a lot, and the family doesn't know a lot either at the moment. So we don't have a whole lot of information. What we do know is that he did get into an altercation prior to him being transferred, and he had some sort of head injury. That's one thing that came out in court when they attempted to red flag one of the corrections officers and take away his guns. Okay, so let's go back to the article. The Times-Union also reported last month that death of Brooks exposed the apparently rampant violations of the department's policy governing the use of body-worn cameras, as well as supervisors' failure to enforce the rules. So this has been a long-standing. Let me make myself big. So this has been a long-standing issue with DOC's Department of Correctional and Community Supervision. They cannot police themselves. It's a miracle that we have 4 body cams, 4 videos from 4 officers. Uh, they obviously did not know that there was recording. They must have hit something, but we have that. So thankfully, we have that because I mean, I could really imagine if we did have no video, this would not be as big as it is because there are countless number of inmates that have been beaten and murdered by COs and nothing has been done. And now we have actual video to go with a homicide. So if those body cams were not present, we would not be here today. So going back to the article, the Times-Union also reported last month the death of Brooks exposed the apparently rampant violations of the department's policy governing the use of body-worn cameras, as well as supervisors' failure to enforce the rules. Body cameras were deployed at Marcy State Prison last May, and the department has been slowly deploying the devices at prisons since 2017 under a pilot program. How convenient. But the incident at Marcy confirmed that some incidents of physical force are not being recorded, even when officers are wearing body cameras and supervisors are monitoring their actions. So there's no consequences for these officers. There's no repercussions. They don't follow the policy, and they don't get fired. They can murder someone and not get fired, and that's occurred. That's occurred. At least 3 sergeants who were present or nearby when Brooks was being beaten They also failed to activate their cameras to record the December 9th incident. 3 officers and a sergeant who had turned on their body cameras and not activated the devices to begin recording when other officers began using physical force on Brooks. So if there's a physical altercation, everyone should have been quick to turn on their body cams. That did not occur. The Times Union first reported last month that the body cameras worn by those 4 correctional officers, including the sergeant, were passively recording portions of the incident, even though their devices had not been activated to record. Investigators were able to retrieve the video footage from those 4 devices because of a function on the Axon cameras, unknown to the officers, that recorded video when the devices were turned on, even if they had not been activated. You know, thankfully we have that. The footage is expected to be critical during any prosecution. The video does not include audio because the officers' body cams were not activated. That means prosecutors may need to seek cooperation from some of the others who witnessed the incident because they heard what was being said, but did not take part in the beating. So, as I mentioned before, you are going to have to get cooperation from those other corrections officers. I'm sure some of them have already flipped. Okay. Now, one quick thing. So, there was a video I made last week, and it had a criminal defense attorney who said he was representing one of the corrections officers. The defense attorney is somebody correct me if I'm wrong. It was Andrew Safranco. Okay. During his interview, he stated that it's possible that the body cam footage might be something that they will attempt to not admit into evidence. So, if there is a trial, if this goes to trial, we will see that there will be attempts by defense attorneys not to admit the footage into evidence. So that's going to be a very, very, very tough sell for any criminal defense attorney because these body cam, devices were supposed to be on. That's the nature of why they're there. That's the nature of their job with these body cameras. So we have a comment from Sharon that says it doesn't matter what was said. We saw what they did. Exactly 100%. I don't care if in that video they were freaking singing Disney themes and Disney songs. They could have been saying anything. It doesn't matter because we saw the physical actions of what occurred. So it's great to have. It would have been great to have audio, but we don't have the audio portion. But the video, the images paint a very graphic picture that you really can't get around. Back to the article. Um, okay. At least 2 of the officers involved in the Marcy incident were sued for a 2016 excessive force case filed on behalf of numerous inmates at Midstate Correctional Facility in Oneida County, which is next door to Marcy. I'm going to stop it there for a quick second. For those of you who don't know, I don't want to, give the entire story. I did a video about this. So there's, in Midstate, there was a day of terror. There was a correction officer who had gotten hurt, and it wasn't by the hands of an inmate. The correctional staff thought it was the inmates. A few days later, they came and swarmed the dorm under the pretense of they were looking for contraband, looking for a weapon, and they beat the crap out of, I believe it was 32 inmates, and 2 of them were SA'd. Okay, so if you don't know, in December of 2024, there's a civil case in which the judge determined that there was excessive force used and granted a win on behalf of these inmates. I don't know how many are former inmates, how many are still incarcerated, but at some point we'll jump into the monetary damages of that case. Let's go back into the article. Okay. Okay. At least two of the officers involved in the Marcy incident were sued for a 2016 excessive force case filed on behalf of numerous inmates at Midstate Correctional in Oneida County, which is next door to Marcy. In that case, a judge recently ruled that the current and former inmates had proven their allegations that they had been systematically beaten and abused as part of a directive to punish them for an incident in which an officer had fallen and was injured, that prison officials wrongly believed he had been attacked by an inmate. Basically, what I had said before. I'm actually reading this article for the first time. I wanted to not read it fully before I came on live with you. Going back to the article, the preliminary autopsy by the Onondaga County Medical Examiner's Office had determined that a preliminary cause of Brooks' death may have been asphyxia due to compression of the neck. That initial report, according to court records, also found he had a fractured nose, bruises on his face and extremities, and soft tissue hemorrhages on both sides of his neck and in his genitals. So, how disgusting and deplorable you have to be to beat this inmate, to beat Robert Brooks, and to stomp on his genitalia. You are sending a signal that this person is not human. Shame on you. And that's Anthony Farina, who I think should obviously do the most time out of all these correctional officers. Okay, let's go back to the article. The autopsy report confirms what was already clear. Robert Brooks' violent death was a homicide, said Elizabeth Mazur, an attorney for the family. We look forward to the prosecution of those responsible. In the meantime, we are pushing forward with our fight for justice for Mr. Brooks and his family. I just wanted to say something very quick because New York State has settled, I want to say hundreds of, you know what? Don't quote me, I might be wrong. I want to say New York State has settled from 2010, maybe several hundred civil cases filed against corrections officers. And money does not take away the need for justice. It won't take away the need for justice. Um, so, and basically the taxpayers are paying for this. They're paying for these civil suits. You go back to the article. Okay. Okay, so Elizabeth Mazur, who's one of the attorneys, says we look forward to the prosecution of those responsible. In the meantime, we are pushing forward with our fight for justice for Mr. Brooks and his family. Okay, so to give credit, this is an article from the Times Union. The writer is Brendan J. Lyons, who I believe has covered, the Robert Brooks homicide before. All right, let me remove this. Okay. I'm going to go over some of the comments here. Yes, Kevin says someone is holding a flood of evidence. Someone is sitting on. Iredell says, typical lowbrow situation expected in this civilization. It's pervasive. No body cam in court. Vicky says, I believe the camera evidence will be used, but if not, what would make eyewitness testimony all the more important? Correct. Another comment from Iredell. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. He had his liver fractured on purpose. His foot was not in his groin, but under his rib on his liver. Okay. Okay. So again, just to summarize, to recap what we went over, we do have a sealed indictment. The indictment is going to be unsealed on Tuesday. Obviously, most likely Tuesday. As soon as that becomes unsealed, I will be coming on. I will be talking about it. I welcome all of you to come back on and chat with me about this. So I am going to be inviting anyone who wants to get on with me. If you want to come on and give me your take on the situation, I would just say if um, if you have a decent camera and you have the cam up, show your face, no music in the background. So if anybody wants to come on with me and share your thoughts, I'm more than happy to hear from anyone who wants to come on. So give me a second. Something. Let me post it up. Okay, do people see the link in the chat? Can somebody just do a thumbs up or do yes to let me know that the link is there? Kevin, you're very welcome. Vicky, you're very welcome. Appreciate it. Okay. Okay. Link here. Okay, so the link is there. I'll give it 10 more seconds for anyone who wants to come on, connect with me. And by all means, if there's anyone out there, right now I'm seeing 32 people in the chat. If you disagree with me, if you're a corrections officer and you want to come on, if you work for law enforcement, you have a difference of opinion, by all means, come on. I'd love to connect with you if anyone has any questions. But if not, we'll just call it a day and go back to our lives. And I'll close this out. Okay. So as of now, we don't have anyone coming on. So let me just close by saying that everyone out there, this is indeed promising. This is, you know, I definitely want to be cautiously optimistic. Tuesday is going to be key. I want to see what the charges are. Um, we know there were at least 4 or 5 corrections officers who put their hands on Mr. Brooks. I want to see murder charges. I want to see homicide charges. I don't want to see felony assault. If that's the case, I'm going to be very pissed off, right? There needs to be homicide charges. There has to be justice in this case. So, for everyone out there, I appreciate you coming on, spending time with me. If you've liked this live stream, I know we had some hiccups. I don't have a ton of experience doing live streams, but I'm here trying to share this with you. Like the video, share the video. If you feel that I brought value, feel free to subscribe to the channel. If you haven't already, feel free to do so. Thank you. God bless, and see you next time. I am doing a live stream on Monday in reference to whether Marcy should be shut down. And also, since the indictments are going to be unsealed on Tuesday, I will be doing a live stream, and anyone who wants to come on can feel free to come on. Okay? If not, take care. God bless. Be safe. Enjoy your Valentine's Day. Love, love, and hug the people that you truly love. Love is a verb. Okay? So go on and love the people around you. Take care.